this day, is today one of the most popular Arthur episodes ever? Because it feels like the blizzard outside.
Ah, I see what you did there.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of inclement weather over on the east side of Canada as we record this episode of Elwood City Limits.
Viewers at home, mark the blizzard mention off your Elwood City Limits bingo card. Cause yeah, there's lots of snow out there. I'm looking out in my new setup, Will. I have this like window. Usually I before I was recording in like a room with no windows, basically. And I can really see it coming down out there. So let's hope that we don't lose power mid-show. If, for instance, this episode ends like The Sopranos or something and you're all confused, that's why. It's because the power infrastructure here in Nova Scotia, I'll say it, is wretched. So stay tuned. You can live in suspense just like us, listeners at home, thinking the whole time, oh my goodness, is the power going to cut at any moment now?
I'll go a step above wretched and say famously unreliable. So, but you're not far off. Yeah, that's a really good point. Is that in times like this, you can't exactly count on our local power affiliate conglomerate. So let's get into it. It's Elwood City Limits, the episodic Arthur podcast. Will Young here with Lucas Mancini. Glad to have you back, Lucas. I also have some good news. This is I get these emails every now and again to kind of see. This is how I become aware of like the iTunes, or no, it's not iTunes anymore. The Apple Podcast reviews that you guys sometimes leave us, and this email sometimes also comes with chart updates. So I'm happy to announce that Elwood City Limits is currently number 47. The number 47 TV and film podcast in Jamaica.
I don't want to go into some sort of offensive accent, so I will say just simply in my own voice, big ups to all of those listeners in Jamaica. Peace be unto you, our Jamaican listeners. I'm a big fan. I was drinking Red Stripe yesterday, watching the Super Bowl, Will. So, much love to Jamaica. I will go as far as to say dance hall music is one of the great gifts, the great earthly gifts that have been bestowed on this world. So, thank you to the people of Jamaica, their beautiful culture, the beautiful island. Thank you for being such dutiful listeners of Elwood City Limits.
Yes, thank you from me as well to our apparent Jamaican listeners. Lucas, I don't want to spend too much time on it because by the time the free feed hears this, it'll be old news. But did your guys win at the Super Bowl?
So I don't really. I'll keep it a buck with you, Will. I know between the two of us, I'm like Mr. Sports. But my least favorite team sport is football. I'm more of a basketball guy.
Right. That's true.
Now so my guys did not win at the Super Bowl. I was rooting for the Eagles, because I own an Eagles t-shirt, that I wear sometimes, and because they're more northeastern. So, kind of closer to us in the grand scheme of things. But I really don't care that much.
Fair enough. It was all about the experience.
Exactly. It's a matter of tradition. You simply have to watch it, in case something crazy happens and I miss it. I got to have my takeout about Rihanna's newly announced pregnancy. Everybody needs to know what I think. So that's why I watched it.
Fair enough. I also have a friend who's a big Eagles fan, so that was the only allegiance I had going into this game. So too bad for him. But well, there you go.
Rihanna, it looks like she was performing on a Smash Brothers stage.
Yes, that was the common refrain I'd heard, even from my friend group, and I got a good look at it. It's pretty good, It's closer to Final Destination. I call me when Rihanna does the Super Bowl on Poke Floats.
Okay.
Now that's a halftime show.
Yeah. What are we gonna see a Super Bowl halftime show from Master Hand?
Yeah, seriously, or just like they should do like the batting challenge
home run contest.
Yes, the home run contest.
Oh no, save that for the World Series.
See if Patrick Mahomes can break the targets.
Okay, this is good stuff, Will.
Yes, if you're listening from Jamaica or if you're listening from anywhere around the world, be sure to send us in an email correspondence, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. No emails this week. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that. I do have a couple of corrections from a couple of our recent episodes on a couple of facts we put out there. So in 2 episodes ago, when we were talking about the switch to 16:9 for Arthur, I said that season 16 is in 16:9 but not in America. Now, I had my facts kind of confused there. So season 16, the season we're in right now, is broadcasting 16:9, or at least it was broadcasting 16:9 in every territory. What I was thinking of is that for whatever reason, seasons 12 to 15 was broadcasting 4:3 in some regions. So I had it a bit confused in my head. A lot of numbers in that one. From our previous episode, in which our guest Hannah was part of the show, we were talking about how they were playing a clone of what looked to be the game Flappy Bird. It was called Cranky Bees. This is in the episode Muffy Takes the Wheel. But here's the thing, and this was another thing that was pointed out by Peebs. So the episode Muffy Takes the Wheel was released in 2012 and was probably worked on, if not in early 2012, then in 2011. Flappy Bird wasn't released until 2013. And if you watch, Lucas, if you watch the episode, the game they're playing, it is like a dead ringer for Flappy Bird. So, you know, forget Simpsons predicted it. Arthur predicted it. Flappy Bird.
Yeah, we got to run, not walk, to social media and start posting, did you know that Arthur predicted Flappy Bird?
Yeah, that really astounded me. I didn't even think to look that up because, like, how do you come to Flappy Bird independent of the game? But there you go. They were there a whole year before. So a couple of corrections there. Thank you to everybody who pointed that out. And while we're saying thank you, we want to say thank you to our patrons. Patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. That's where you can get episodes of the show a week early. As well, you can get our monthly side series, including ECL Origins. And this month, we're returning to For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. We got a lot of great suggestions for shows that we should check out. And I've decided on one, and I will tell you at the end of this episode. In the meantime, we want to say thank you to patrons such as Vanessa, as well as Veronica Tram and Awesome Eddie 21 and Iman Salehian. We also want to say thank you to Ricardo A. Soto, Katie, Tyler Bazetsky, and Emma. Thank you to Jenny Cardenas, Katie P., Jared G., and to Chloe. And as well to Dear Miss Elizabeth, a.k.a. Z, and Maria Gisselquist. And that is everybody in the lineup. We can clear that row, and we'll be starting over with new thank yous on the next episode. That's patreon.com/Elwood City Limits if you would like to support the show, have your name read on the show, and get our content early or at all if it's our side series. Lucas, we continue on in the first Flash season here. Not just this story, but this whole dang episode is all about DW.
All DW, all the time. Some of our listeners may not be happy, but you're going to have to wait and see to see how we feel about a double dose of Doral Winifred.
A D-double dose on Elwood City Limits. And the first story is literally called All About DW. I don't know if you knew this. Arthur's kind of letting us in here on some lore here about when DW wants something, she'll do anything to get it. Namely that in this cold open, she's practicing for the role of Red Riding Hood, which she's hoping to get in a school play. She's practicing with Grandma Thora. They're doing the classic story of the little girl who goes to her grandmother's house but finds that she's been eaten by a wolf. And in needing a woodsman character, she kind of forces Arthur in a directorial manner to be the woodsman. And she also kind of breaks down a little bit when he isn't so into it. There's some really good DW lines in this story. Like, I really liked the delivery on Arthur kind of comes in, he picks up a tennis racket, and he's just like, what seems to be the problem? I'm the woodsman. And DW says, put some life into it.
Yeah, she says, you don't play tennis, you chop down trees. This is some great examples of when they write DW like wise beyond her years, but the irony is that her vocabulary and the way she's speaking is like an actual someone giving criticism on acting, right? Put some life into it, like that kind of thing. Like she wants Arthur to use the method, but of course it's for this like silly little children's play. So, good comedy in this opening bit.
What's the name of that famous acting teacher? What's her name?
Oh, I don't know. Is this the person who came up with the method? I thought it was a guy.
No, I think the person... No, I forget who I'm thinking of. There's like a famous acting teacher woman. I don't remember her name. Anyway. So yeah, that's the idea behind the story, is that there's going to be a production of Red Riding Hood at DW's preschool. And DW expects that she's going to get it. There's again, a lot of good lines from DW here, especially. When they're waiting to be assigned their parts. So like the Tibbles are both assigned as like the big bad wolf and his grandma. Timmy gets assigned the big bad wolf, and DW turns to him and says, congratulations, Timmy. I look forward to working with you. Like it's very, very professional minded, very, very LinkedIn language from DW. But she's not going to be Red Riding Hood. That's going to be Emily. DW is cast as tree number 2. I'm not even tree number 1.
Yeah, funniest joke of the episode, because she says, I'm not even tree number 1. And the teacher says, that's Amanda. And we smash cut to Amanda, who plays tree number 1, who's the opposite of DW. She's just kind of clapping. Like, Amanda does not come off as the most, like, dedicated to her practice as an actor, because she's just kind of jumping up and down clapping. And it's like, dang, that's who they got for tree number 1. You don't even meet that standard.
There's a point similar to the one that you made a couple minutes ago that I'm going to revisit in the next story, but like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's a great scene where DW is back at home. She's playing, I think it's Go Fish, with Grandma Thora and Arthur. And Arthur asks her if she has any 8s, and DW says, no, I don't have any 8s. You know what else I don't have? Meaning the role of Red Riding Hood. There's even, we go from this to, did you catch the canted angle that they put here? The Dutch angle? DW stands up on her chair and she's yelling, she says, does this look any fun to you? And the angle is slanted because we are into, it's the classic filmmaking trick of you use a Dutch angle to bring us into DW's warped perspective on the world.
Her psyche is she's demented because she's lost this role.
It was a really good choice. Like, I liked that in terms of how this particular scene was directed. And again, DW was very funny. So DW tries to kind of figure out what she can do at this point. She's talking to Nadine up in her room. Nadine suggests that DW could be Emily's understudy, so she could be the person that plays Red Riding Hood if something happens to Emily. DW has a line where she says, you never know, she did look pretty sweaty after freeze tag yesterday.
Honestly, I'm on DW's side with this one. Like, you always need an understudy, especially for the lead role.
That's true. And it's not like tree number 2 is a vital role. You could probably get anybody to fill that seat. So really, this should have been already done, but DW is kind of forcing herself into the understudy role, like kind against everybody's wishes.
It's a black swan kind of situation here.
Right. She's kind of like, well, I am the most talented aside from Emily, so I don't understand why you wouldn't want me to be the understudy. Thankfully, that's as far into Black Swan as they go. So, well, it gets a little surreal near the end of the story, but not in the way that Black Swan does. So DW is thinking of ways to kind of get Emily out of the role. I use the word like she tries to intimidate her, but she's not like threatening her. She's more just like trying to convince her or fool her into losing the role. So like her initial idea with Nadine is that they could create a moat of alligators around her house so that she physically can't play the role. Except in this idea, I mean, it's creating a moat with alligators. But in this fantasy, DW puts herself on the same side as Emily, so she's also gets trapped. And then they look over at Nadine, and Nadine just shrugs.
This sequence just reminded me that this is one of those things that shows up in cartoons that I thought moats were going to play a much larger factor in my life.
Like quicksand?
Yeah, exactly. Except I don't think I've ever actually seen a real life moat ever.
I think I saw one when like I went to Spain and they have some castles over there, and I saw what used to be a moat. But you're right. It's not what you think. It's not like the moat around a castle in a Disney movie or something that's filled with like dangerous fish, or in this case alligators. My life has not seen many moats in its time, but I hold out hope. I don't even know if there was a moat in that Fisher Price castle, like the one that all the rich kids had. Like, was there a moat in that one?
Let's see, Fisher.
With the cannonball?
Yeah, with the cannonball. And I love that you say all the rich kids had that. Will, I had that castle.
That's true. Well, and like I say that, but it's just like, it's not to say that my family was poor, but it's just like, it felt like a certain signifier of, if not wealth, then status, to have that Fisher Price castle.
I'm looking at pictures of the Great Adventures Castle on Reddit, and it does not seem to have a moat. It's got a big gate. Man, whew, they don't make them like they used to. This looks like a great toy. My goodness. Anyway.
You know what actually was probably the rich kid toy of that kind of ilk was like the Lego pirate ship.
I definitely didn't have that, yeah.
No, yeah. I think I knew one kid who did, and they were definitely richer than my family. DW also tries to convince Emily to check out a performance called Cat Arctica, which is, she keeps saying it's tap dancing kittens on ice, which is playing in Crown City apparently at the same time as this school play in like the middle of the afternoon, which seems like poor advertising. But Emily is not swayed by Cat Arctica. She also, I use the word intimidate because she kind of tries to spook her off of it. She gives her this scary paper bag mask DW gives to Emily, because in case she forgets her lines and gets embarrassed, she can put this bag on her head. And Emily is very offended at that. That's kind of like the last straw. That's the last one that DW tries.
It's giving, remember the I'm not famous anymore era of Shia LaBeouf? That's what this reminded me of.
She's Kip Sabian, underrated over it. That's what it should say. So DW, that's her kind of the last thing that she tries. She's over at Grandma Thora's at one point. I will say we see Killer a couple of times in this episode, which you know what? If you had said that Killer never made it to the Flash show, I wouldn't be able to tell you different. I'd believe that, but it's good to see her all the same. So in the end, Emily loses her voice before the performance, so DW gets the part. This is, I should say, we were at Grandma Thora's because DW is talking about what she wants to do to get this part, and the lesson the lesson in the DW episodes is always a bit more direct. And Grandma Thora says, it wouldn't be very fair if you were Red Riding Hood and Emily wanted your part. So do you think you're being fair? And so DW rethinks. She's, as Hideo Kojima would say, she is ashamed of her words and deeds.
Yes.
So, so she feels bad about how she acted. She's going to apologize, but the next day, Emily has lost her voice. So DW gets the part, which she doesn't feel great about. In fact, her guilt is such that she gets nervous when she's about to do the play, and she forgets some of her lines. She has this dream the night before the play where she's initially in the woods leading up to Red Riding Hood's house, and there's like the Tibbles faces are in the trees.
Right, and that was actually in the title card for this episode was this clip of the Tibbles face in the tree, and it's just a crazy looking image. Like, out of context, the tree with like the big Tibble face, I was like, what the heck?
And Emily is also the big bad wolf in this equation. She doesn't really do all that much, but she does have like the wolf ears and fangs and kind of like speaks in a more growly voice. DW goes into the house in the dream, and it turns into a stage. Like, it looks like a sitcom stage, but it's also in like an opera theater, and every major character in the episode is like in the wings. Like Miss Morgan is there, Grandma Thora, Arthur, Killer is there, and they're all kind of heckling her. And Emily, the big bad wolf, gives DW the bag to put on her head. So DW, very, very nervous. Emily, even though she has a sore throat, it's a kind of nebulous lost my voice thing that happens in a lot of cartoons where it's like, no real explanation as to why. It doesn't even seem to be due to illness. Like this, Lucas, you speaking about moats, I thought that losing my voice was going to be more of a problem when I was a kid. We've even had an episode way, way early on where DW loses her voice, and she doesn't seem to be, like, sick all that much. Well, okay, she is sick, but, like, sometimes in a cartoon, it'll be like they lost their voice, and it's not tied to an illness. It's just kind of happens. They just get laryngitis.
Yeah, it's just run-of-the-mill laryngitis.
Yeah, and so Emily is actually still in the play. She takes DW's role as tree number 2, and the whole time when, like, Emily is there and, like, putting her hand on DW's shoulder or handing her things, I was like, don't touch me. Like, you're sick with something. And it's, again, I think it's where we are with COVID, I
True.
very much don't want to get sick again. And hey, once again, Halifax, great incubator for COVID, it turns out. So I'm very much just like, how about, like, don't touch me if you have lost your voice?
There's a way to lose your voice, though, where it's not viral. Like, I think laryngitis, like, you could just, like, mess up your voice box. Like, I lose my voice. Listen, Will, I've been known to lose my voice a time or two after a particularly passionate spot of karaoke. I might lose my voice. I think if you, like, scream a lot or you do it the wrong way. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening with the Emily's here. Yeah, it's true. They don't really explain what's going on with Emily, but I assumed if it was viral, she wouldn't even be at school, let alone playing tree number 2 and touching up on DW like that.
I know. I would really hope so. Maybe she went to a hardcore show the night before and just, like, totally threw her vocals.
She went to go see Comeback Kid, and she was participating in the gang vocals during Wake the Dead or something like that.
So Emily is this tree. DW completely forgets her lines. She's so nervous. But Emily helps her through it. She kind of it gets to the point where DW, like, trips over the set and they have to kind of reset everything. But Emily helps her through the performance, and they manage to end off on a positive note where they are kind of on the same page again, thanks to Emily's help. And now, a word from us kids. Once again, very much the classic flavor here of Word From Us Kids. We got a class of second graders who are working on their own play, and it's always cool to see these kinds of projects. Different kids are working on different parts of the show, so there's like 4 groups. There's the actors, the writers, the set designers, and there was a 4th one. I'm blanking on what it was.
All I'll say about this is that the kids...
Music, maybe? I don't know.
The kids very quickly... What was funny about this was I think the teachers knew what they were doing when they assigned each kid to their particular roles, because the kids very quickly embody... Like, even though they're, like, tiny little children, like, you can tell, oh, these actors are, like, the actor kids. Like, they're like, I'm an actor, and, like, they're very much, like, center of the attention. And it cuts to the writers' kids, and, like, one of them's, like, rubbing their temples like a grown-up writer's room. Like, you can see, like, they look like they've just been, like, smoking cigs and, like, pounding coffee. And, like, you can see the scribbled paper. They've been doing rewrites rapidly, and they're all, like, oh, gosh, we gotta, like, write this character really quickly because the costume people need to make the costume for the new character, and, like, if they don't have enough time, I thought this was funny how quickly putting these kids in these roles embodied, like, the stereotype of a writer's room. So I got a big kick out of that.
That's a good catch. I was really taken by the kids who were on the production side of things. They, like, creating the props and the sets, and, like, a couple of these, like, props were really cool. Like, the story that they're doing is about, like, something about a snowfall, and there's, like, a wizard character who drives a snowplow, which they, like, made out of cardboard. It's like this, almost the size of the kid, but it is like the side of a truck, and it looks cool. Like, it's just really neat that they were able to make one this big. They also have this little contraption that they use to dump out the snow, which is just, like, ripped up pieces of paper, but it's like this kind of almost pulley system where it, like, dumps the snow on the kids. I thought it was really, like, kind of ingenious for kids that age.
Yeah, they give the snowplow driver a cardboard beard, and one of the kids explains, well, of course we had to give him a beard, because otherwise it would look like a child was operating that snowplow. Fair enough. That's solid logic. We can't have, children operating heavy machinery, I guess. So, I'm impressed. I was fruitfully impressed with this production.
Good. I mean, it seemed like a lot of fun. Good project. A lot of good projects in Word From Us Kids this season. All right, we're going to get into the second story, which is, again, about DW. Right after this. Supporting this podcast is how it keeps going, and it's very easy to do. So here's how you can do that. If you're listening to this show and want to get the full back catalog of Elwood City Limits and all of its sister shows and offshoots, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and even more services. You can also go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Elwood City Limits, for the full back catalog. If we aren't on a service you use, please let us know. You can interact with us on social media. We're on Twitter @ECL Podcast, Instagram @Elwood City Limits, and twitch.tv/Elwood City Limits Pod for our occasional streams. We're also on Facebook and Tumblr. Feel free to reach out to us on social media, or you can email us, and your email might be read on the show, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Finally, for exclusive content including entire side series like For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, and ECL Origins, subscribe to us for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. That's all for now. Thanks a lot for listening, and now back to the show.
And now, back to Arthur!
Or if you're on the Patreon right now, it's called Blockheads.
Ugh.
And
that's me trying to do a Roblox noise. Ugh. Ugh. Oof. Oof. Yeah, you can do it better. Oof. Oof.
It's the only thing I know about Roblox, and it's all because of H-Bomber Guy. So, oof. Yeah, I can't do it. But, Blockheads. This one actually starts off with Arthur. Arthur talking about his dream house. Arthur's dream house. Yeah.
I've been watching, there's been a YouTube series I've been watching about this guy, the scuffed realtor, who has been, looking at people's house listings. And he's been, especially these McMansions, he's been roasting people's decor, saying that, money can't buy taste. And a lot of people just going into what makes good interior design and what makes a good hot property. So I was all excited to roast Arthur's dream house. What do you want to hear first, Will? The negative or the positive?
Okay. Let me just set up the bones of the house, and then I will let you do this. So in Arthur's dream house, the elements include he has a robotic butler whose name is Wilson. He sleeps in a hammock. He has a pool in the shape of a dog bone, and he also has access to the latest technology. So, Lucas, I'll let you decide in terms of where you want to start here, in terms of positive or negative.
Yeah, so let's start with the kitchen. Taking a look at the kitchen, it's kind of like a penthouse suite. We have kind of a floating kitchen island with the overhead thing for the stove. That all looks good. I like the cabinets look good. I like his dining room set, very mid-century modern. I will say there's this ugly overhead lighting throughout the house. This is probably my main negative, is there's this gross overhead light. And in the kitchen, you really don't even need it because he's getting so much natural light from these massive windows. Don't know what to say about the robot butler. It's just kind of weird. Also, looking through this with a fine comb, I noticed Crunch cereal. Arthur's still getting served Crunch cereal here. The dog bone pool. I don't know if Arthur is still in the Northeast. Is he in Elwood City in this giant penthouse? Because if that's the case, then I guess it makes sense to have the indoor pool. I'm just not a big indoor pool fan in general for a personal residence. So
it seems to be maybe somewhere in the sky.
It's in the sky pool. I don't know. It is cool that it's a big dog bone though. That is a nice touch. And yeah, that's pretty much it. He talks about having all the latest technology, and then he gets a Skype call, a Zoom call from Buster from somewhere in another dimension.
We talked about this in the last episode, actually, how Arthur is entering the era of video calls, like Skype and Zoom and that kind of stuff. But this is different. This is on the actual TV. And so Buster has his own dream house that is in outer space, and he needs to teleport Arthur there, Star Trek style, to the Alpha Formaggi galaxy. To any Italians listening to or on the show, But Lucas, you kind of got your own PBS Cribs thing here, so why don't you take us through Buster's dream home?
Yeah, so it's called Alfa Formaggi for those who are not familiar with the Italian language, because it is some sort of cheese dimension where everything is cheese.
Yes.
And right off the bat, I found 3 problems with this. Problem number 1 is that cheese goes bad, right? So especially if it's your house, I don't know if his insulation is made of cheese. Like, the implication is that everything here is cheese. So that's gonna stink. That's gonna go bad really quickly. Ugh. You're gonna get mold sickness. Problem number 2 is that Buster is actively eating, like, in this small clip, he eats like 3 big parts of his house already. He's like eating lampshades, he's eating the couch, and at this rate, he's not going to have much house left even before it goes bad.
That's right. I give it like a week. Buster has like no self-control.
And 3, and I think this is just a sign of getting older, this is not a thought that would occur to a child. I think that I'm worried about Buster's intestinal tract. I'm worried he's going to become horribly constipated, something like Elvis or something, like, because all of this cheese is going to surely cause some blockage. And I'm just, because he's listing about the different types of cheeses that all the different the furniture is made out of, and he's taking big handfuls, like giant bitefuls of this cheese, and that's just not good. No matter how much of a young man you are, that's not good for you, I feel like.
That's true. I mean, it's probably all those different cheeses are messing with all his gut microbes or what have you. But I will say, like, you're not wrong, but better now than when he's older. Like, cheese and dairy just kind of becomes a problem the older you get. So if it's going to happen, like, let it happen now while his system is young and he can bounce back. This is actually not an Arthur Buster episode. It is another DW Emily episode that is also mainly taking place at the preschool. So this starts off with DW and Emily. There's no other toys that they can play with, so they are stuck playing with the blocks, which I was like, I loved playing with blocks when I was a kid. I would love to get, quote-unquote, stuck with them. So why they were poo-pooing it so much, I couldn't agree with. Different strokes for different folks. But they actually end up using their time with the blocks, making a quite impressive structure. And the word that we're going to keep coming back to is, it's not a palace, it's not a castle, it's a combination of both. It's a palassal.
Yeah, they, like, as you said, Will, they kind of learn the magic of the blocks as they use them. Like, they're adverse to the idea, counting down the minutes until snack time. I think DW is the one who's like, oh, I can't wait till snack time. It's funny, we were talking earlier in the last episode about how DW is treating this children's school play with the utmost seriousness. What's funny throughout this episode is her treating playing with the blocks like she's on the job site. Yeah. And it starts with, her counting down to snack time. But soon, much like you, Will, they learn the magic of the blocks. And they realize that the day flew by because they had so much fun making this structure.
And they get praise from Arthur's mom, who is very impressed with what they've built so far. And they have all these plans for their dream palassal. In fact, DW has a dream about it later that night. So she's thinking of, like, unicorn stables, a Mary Moo Cow mini golf course, and a museum of all the dopey things Arthur has ever done, including statues of, like, him tripping, paintings of him with weird faces. It's a great attention to detail there. But
I also want to, before we move on, in the last episode, and I'll talk a little bit more about this during my final thoughts, but I was kind of unimpressed with the visuals of one of the dream sequences in the last episode.
Oh, yeah?
And I was like, oh, is this what we have for the Flash era? Like, kind of the more imaginative dream sequence, is that a bygone thing? And I was pleasantly surprised by the visuals in this dream sequence. Like, they really made the most out of drawing what the life-sized palassal would look like, and it's so colorful and vibrant. And so I will put that feather in this episode's cap, that this dream sequence is appropriately kind of it's fantastical in a way.
Yeah, you're right. It really does kind of stand out. It is appropriately childlike in its kind of whimsical imagination of this whole thing. And so DW and Emily have this whole, like, it's a constantly sprawling and evolving plan. Like, they keep having to, like, make new things for like new characters and animals that show up along the way. So it just keeps it's a tale that grows in the telling, and eventually they become obsessed with making their palazzle just right. There's a couple of kind of instances where we see like how this kind of extends. So for example, the Tibbles offer to help, quote unquote, but they are really just breaking down the walls. So DW and Emily do their best to put a stop to this, and they do so by offering them snacks as bribes to keep them away, and eventually like hire them as the security guards of the palazzle.
Yeah, she's already doing, dirty union deals with the mob as a developer of the palazzle.
This is Arthur's take on season 2 of The Wire. It's just like
yeah, exactly.
If the palazzle was near a pier and like the Tibbles were Greek, then we'd have it all. We'd have everything. They do try to enlist some of the other kids as workers at one point. I guess this is a good point to talk about what I wanted to talk about earlier. So you mentioned that like DW in many ways seems a lot older, like in wise beyond her years. There are points throughout this where we see the other kids going throughout, typical preschool activities. So snack time, nap time, they do a lesson outside. And it's so funny to contrast DW and even Emily, like the way they speak with the way the other kids like go about their lives. Like they do a lesson outside, which DW and Emily don't want to stop building their palazzle and kind of try to get back in at various points. And the kids outside are like doing, I forget if it was like ABCs or like let's just say they're doing ABC. So they're doing like the A, B, C, D. And meanwhile, DW is like, as you said, she's like become a contractor. So she's like, she's just like, you've put us an hour behind schedule, James. And it's just like some of these kids can barely like get their brains around like the basic alphabet. And DW's over here like giving Glengarry Glen Ross monologues by comparison. It's just really funny to see her like in her element with kids who are like nominally her age. But as I've said before, like my 6-year-old niece has a bit more trouble with the English language than DW does speaking it. So wise beyond her years, as we always say.
Well, and even more so because this I was really happy to. I feel like at this point when I was watching the episode, it was maybe losing a little bit of steam. I was like, okay, they're building this castle. And then we get this whole scheme that DW concocts in order to steal the blocks from 3rd grade. And I was like, ooh, I love a good ruse. I love a good, like, heist. And, yeah, the teacher's the mark. They get Emily to fake an injury on the job site. She says a block like hurt her ankle, and this is how DW steals the 3rd grade blocks. And
she does so with like a wagon. She gives like the thumbs up when she comes back with them, and she's even like they're like justifying themselves of like the 3-year-olds aren't going to miss a couple blocks here and there. There's also another point, great DW line here where I think it's when they're coming back in from outside and they're doing the lesson outside, and Emily's like, are you sure we're okay to do this? And DW's like, don't worry, they teach you all that stuff again in kindergarten. So like hemorrhaging their learning and education in preschool to just get more building done, and they're taking it incredibly seriously. As we said, the Tibbles become the security guards who are basically working for snacks, especially raisins. Like one of them says there'd better be raisins tomorrow, and it's just like as if you couldn't like be more opposed to the Tibbles. They are raisins fans. I'm just like, ugh. Near the end of the episode, even they're working outside and they're drawing up blueprints for the palazzle, and like what's the little girl's name who played Tree Number 1? She shows up again.
Amanda.
Amanda shows up again.
My throwaway character of the week, unless hopefully Amanda shows up again. I really did get a hearty laugh out of the smash cut to who's Tree Number 1, and Amanda just hopping and clapping.
Amanda, who we've seen a lot in DW's class, but we've never heard her name before. So Amanda comes up and tags Emily, like, tag, you're it. And Emily goes, tag? Do we look like we have time for tag? Just like done being children. It's all about the work. It's all about the work. I kind of thought that this was going the route of like they would eventually disagree on what they want to do with the Palazzo. Like they'll have different plans, but they're actually pretty simpatico the whole way. They're just running themselves ragged. Like they allow themselves to take a nap during nap time, and they have a dream that the Palazzo comes crumbling down, and it's, you know, they're kind of operating without sleep, or it's occupying every moment of their existence. And the final part comes when the kids are visited by a guy who I'm guessing is from the zoo named Captain Campbell, and he's kind of dressed like not Crocodile Dundee, but he's kind of dressed like an Outback kind of guy, and he has with him Ringo the koala.
Which, okay, this doesn't happen, right? Like, I've heard of the lizard guy coming to someone's high school, but, like, I think koalas are endangered. I also don't think, like, I mean, maybe they might have them at zoos, but I think they're almost all living in Australia. There's no, like, guy bringing koalas to American New England preschools, right? Like, this just doesn't happen.
I don't know.
Also, I gotta say it. Animal hierarchy.
Of course. Maybe
why is this koala less intelligent than the rest of these animals? We gotta say it.
Maybe one of our listeners will have had an experience. If a koala was brought to your American preschool, please let us know. It's an experience that neither Lucas nor I have had. So it's you know, they kind of are going back and forth on like, well, they really want to go pet the koala, but they can't stop. They're almost done. And then just through sheer accident, not on both their parts, like Emily's like, I'm starting to break, DW. Like her resolve is straining because it's just too much to keep up. And then through complete accident, the Palazzo gets knocked down completely. And DW and Emily take a second to think about it, and they're completely relieved and even more happy. So they go over and pet the koala. And yes, they have to clean up the blocks, but they're finally free of this horrible task that they've put on themselves. So, it didn't quite go where I thought it would in the end, but we did get to see them pet Ringo the koala. So the D-double dose here. Let's go back to the first DW story, Lucas, all about DW. What did you think of this one?
All about DW, I don't. It's a very straightforward DW episode. Like she wants to have Emily's spot in the play, and she kind of learns the lesson that, you know, she shouldn't covet Emily's spot. She should be supportive of Emily, and then everything kind of just ends up working out for her via happenstance, and they work together. So really, really straightforward. No zigs or zags, but it's still enjoyable. Like DW is well written. The jokes are funny. The jokes land. It's a funny episode. The negative thing I'll say is I alluded to this earlier. I find that, in the second dream sequence where it's supposed to be kind of this like unsettling, like scary dream sequence, the one where you see the Tibbles face, which is, I actually kind of like that part. But besides that, like, I feel like in older Arthur episodes in the pre-Flash era, that's when they would really play around with crazy angles and weird like fisheye vision and kind of gothic imagery and stuff like that. And in this dream sequence, it just kind of looks like they put like alt costumes on all the models they had, and everybody's kind of moving in that static kind of puppety way they always do in the Flash show. So I was like, that kind of made me long for days past of like, I really appreciate just kind of how impressionistic Arthur dream sequences used to be. But that one nitpick aside, I don't know, I think fairly inoffensive episode. Not the most memorable, but definitely not bad. What about you, Will?
I see where you're coming from. I think I come out on this a little bit more positive than you do, and I think that's just due to the fact that I thought that there were a lot of really good lines in here. And this is something that one or two of our patrons brought up in the Discord recently. That's another perk you get from being on our Patreon, is getting in our Discord. Was that, the change in animation is one thing, but as long as the writing is there, then you can kind of get over that stuff. And I think we're both still in the process of capital G getting capital U used to the new animation style. But yeah, this was the DW writing, especially for her, was like as good as ever, and I really enjoyed those parts. And there were like a couple of interesting visual tricks, or at least kind of visuals in general, to both of these stories that I thought worked quite well. And like, I'm just thinking of, like, there's not a whole lot off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm sure it's been used before, but like the Dutch angle in the kitchen, like, really made me notice it, because it's just not something you get from Arthur all the time. And you didn't strictly need it there, but it also made it a lot more memorable and did fit as well. And yeah, so I thought this was all right. I'm kind of more on the thumbs up side of it, just because it made me laugh quite a bit. I thought that Blockheads, I kind of thought I had this all figured out. Like, I looked at it, and as soon as I figured out, like, oh yeah, they're making this like block tower, I figured it was going to be another one where DW and Emily are on the outs because they disagree, and then, you know, something happens, and like maybe they make two different castles and they sabotage it, and they try to sabotage each other's castles. But it didn't. Like, it kind of did something different, and I liked it more for that. Like, I got into this a little bit, and especially because I didn't know how it was going to end, where it's like this mutual obsession that DW and Emily have, and they're not, by the end, they're not completely agreeing with each other. They're still like figuring out what they want to do, but the project is still all-encompassing. And it's an interesting contrast, because as I said with All About DW, you know, it has a fairly obvious message it's trying to impart. And the episodes with DW as the main character, I think we felt are more for younger kids. And this one, I can't really parse the message, and the message I'm getting is actually a bit more mature than I was kind of expecting, because it's like, you got to know when you're getting too deep into something and it's not fun anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's different than like, you should be considerate of your friends' feelings, and you should, you know, do unto others and all that kind of thing. This is more like, hey, don't let this great idea that you have completely eat you alive and hemorrhage the rest of your life, essentially. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that they put some neat spins on it. Like, the heist, like you talked about, I loved that part. Some good DW lines. I actually thought this was a pretty good use of Emily as well. Like, we're very, very early into this season, but this is one of my favorites so far, just because of how unexpected it was, and how it was like, it just did something that's a little bit different than how I expected this to be tackled, and I think I'm going to remember it for that.
Yeah, I had a very similar feelings about Blockheads. It surprised me in kind of a different way, but kind of same trajectory, where first 3/4 of this episode, I thought I had it all figured out. You know, and it's kind of escalating them becoming obsessed with building this block structure. And then I kind of had a different reading and interpretation of the ending, though I do think you're right that it's about, you know, quitting while you're ahead, or knowing when you're becoming too obsessive over something and it's kind of impacting the other things in your life. But I also think there's a little bit of like a Buddhist mindfulness message here. Ooh. In that they put all of this effort into the block house, and then it crumples, and they just kind of move on. And it's, you know, life is like that, Will. We're a part of nature, and to be in nature is a cycle of life and rebirth and death and rebirth. And if we hold on to these things, it's the cause of unhappiness to try and cling on to something. And DW and Emily's block sculptures reminded me of the Tibetan monks' sand mandalas that they build, where they spend months constructing these ornate kind of sand sculptures, for lack of a better term, and then they let them blow away into the wind, because it's a metaphor for how life is supposed to be. And you see, in a way, kind of DW and Emily just let their sculpture, they let their castle crumble, They're now free of the responsibility of maintaining it, and then they move on to go pet the koala. So I actually, for an episode that up until that point I was like, oh, this is pretty middle of the road, nothing spectacular, I did really like the ending and conclusion, because I found it came out of left field, and like you said, you're right, it feels like it's punching above its weight class for a episode about preschoolers.
That's quite spiritual. I could never have anticipated that you would get something like that out of it, but I'm pleased, and I'm glad that we both seemed to take something from this that neither of us really expected. And now it's like that's a whole nother way to rewatch this episode with that in mind. That's a really cool way of looking at it. I'm glad that you shared that. So yeah, I guess as always, I'm very pleasantly surprised. I'm pleased when Arthur can still surprise us in ways we can't anticipate. So there you go. That's our D-double episode right there as we continue on through Arthur Season 16. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Elwood City Limits. Of course, we will have a new episode coming out. Well, we're actually going to be taking a different route. As we get to the end of February, it's time for our next side series episode, and it's going to be For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. Now, I will say once again, ECL patrons, there is a link on the Patreon page where you can submit your suggestions for PBS Kids shows that we haven't watched yet. And it's like a suggestion box. It's a link to a suggestion box. So please leave your suggestions along with any episodes that you particularly want us to tackle. Of the suggestions that we've gotten so far, I'm going to go with one that I was considering for the initial run of For the Kids, and we didn't end up getting to it. It was one of those ones that kind of like, when we were getting down to the last 10, it was like one of the last cuts I ended up making. And I'm glad that somebody suggested it, because we're going to be looking at Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum. So I have kind of a bare idea of what this is. A lot of the suggestions that we got are shows, some of them I've never even heard of before. So this is one where I have heard the name. I kind of understand what the idea is behind it, but otherwise not sure what to expect. So we're going to be doing the full For the Kids treatment. We're going to be doing the history section. We're going to be looking at episodes, or I should say an episode, and we'll be talking about it for the next episode of For the Kids, which will be coming out for patrons next week. Or I should say the week after this one. It's hard to keep track of sometimes with the calendar. So that's what's coming up next. If you are on the free feed, you will be seeing a preview of that. And if you would like the full thing, you can subscribe and pay what you want at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. If you're waiting for the next Elwood City Limits episode, however, it will not be too long. And the next one we're going to take a look at is Get Smart and Baby Steps. So does that mean dog and baby episodes? Not sure. We'll have to wait and see.
Or does it mean the cone of silence? We'll have to see.
So yeah, that's what we have coming up next. Lucas, you have a bit more of a, thankfully we both have like different kind of work from home situations, but take care in dealing with the snow however you have to, and I will do the same. And if you are getting any snow where you are, or inclement weather, please be safe and make sure to take safety precautions. Download this podcast episodes whenever you need it, and just make sure to plan ahead as always. Aside from that, that's it for Elwood City Limits this week. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini.
How can we get any work done if they keep sending us out to play?
We'll see you next time.